What is up, boxing besties? Welcome back to Xicana Boxing on YouTube, especially if you're coming here from that other video where I talked about Tank and LaMont Roach and the New York Athletic Commission and Kneegate and Hair Grease Gate and all of that. So, hi, if you're coming from there, and if you don't come from there, go watch that first if you want. Well, actually, there's no order to this. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about the undercard because this was such a stacked card. I don't want, controversy to take over the fact that this was a great event. Like, I was walking at the Barclays Center shoulder to shoulder with people. Everybody looked so cool. I just want to talk about fight week and covering fight week and my first fight in New York. So this is just like if we were to sit down as boxing besties and like I'd be like just telling you guys like all the chisme for fight week. Yeah, so if you haven't subscribed yet, you don't know what I'm talking about. My name is Lily. I'm an independent boxing journalist who sometimes gets on here to yap about whatever's going on in the sport or fights that I've covered and show videos and show pictures. Subscribe and we can all be boxing besties. But yeah, I already talked about Tank versus LaMont, but mostly on the aspect of whatever's going on with Kneegate and Greasegate, right? But I love being proved wrong, and especially in this way because LaMont Roach neutralized Tank and honestly gave him one of his toughest fights yet, if not his toughest fight, in the fact that he was very much vulnerable. And what's crazy is, like, of course all fighters are going to say, oh, I'm gonna upset the guy, I'm gonna get the upset in fight week. We all hear it. But during fight week, and this is why I like being part of boxing media, right? Even though I don't make money off of things like this. I'm not a big channel. I don't make money like that. No one's paying for my trips to go cover these things. So I like knowing the context, though. I like seeing the fighters before the fight, and even after the press conference, the public press conference is shut off from the stream, from the online stream. The media gets to capture, of course, we post the videos, but we also get to see a lot of things that a lot of people don't see about fighters. And LaMont Roach just had this really great confidence about him. And he kept telling Tank, you're not focused and I'm going to get you. Right? Like, he kept saying that in different ways, but he kept saying that. Like, I know you're not focused. And he just had, like, this feel about him. Like, I'm going to show you guys that you guys are wrong. And I don't take anything away from LaMont Roach. Even if Tank says that he didn't even know what round it was. Even if he claims that he wasn't hurt. And even if I do believe him that... I do think that it came from a punch because, like I mentioned in my last video, like, I saw it. Like, I was there. But... I don't think he was, like, stunned or hurt like that. I just think that he just got up and, entitled as he is, got up and was like, let me go take care of this. And everybody else felt them on, right? So, but stylistically, that fight was amazing. I was entertained. It was one of the most entertaining fights I've seen, with Tank. Because Tank is entertaining because he will bully his opponents, right? But LaMont Roach was there to stand there in front of him and take some shots to then land some big vicious. That right hand, man, was landing. So, badass fight. I personally didn't score it. I don't think a lot of people scored it because we were awaiting a knockout eventually. But I think like around the 9th, 10th, I was like, oh no, I don't think Tank's getting LaMont out of here. Like, he doesn't even look hurt like that or stunned or... Because, but still there were times where Tank would kind of like start putting himself in another gear that I don't think he ever got to his usual, gear. And people would be standing up in the arena like, oh my God, okay, it's going to happen. And then it didn't. So, really weird. And then after the fight at the press conference, Tank walked in like a little kid who kind of like got in trouble. And those that kind of like got in trouble. But like, they're like, yeah. Like that freaking meme on TikTok back in the pandemic era. Hey, how you doing? That's how he like walked into the press conference. Like, he kind of knew that, And it was weird because in one way he was like, I was supposed to call out my other opponent tonight. Someone that was here. So we're like, shook her. Because he was ringside. Pitbull rematch. Because, Pitbull was there. And I got, a little clip from him. And he's like, no, they weren't in my room. It was someone who was in my room. So now everybody's assuming it was Jake Paul. Because Jake Paul, that Canelo fight with Jake Paul and on PBC fell off. Now they were probably like, okay, no, not Gervonta. You fight this guy. And make that money that Canelo didn't want, right? So that, okay. But now he's like, no, I'm not going to retire anymore. I'm going to work on my. I'm gonna retire. I'm not gonna retire anymore. I want the immediate rematch, and I'm gonna fight 4 more times. He said, right? But then when they're like, okay, we're gonna come back, he like changes moods depending on how people ask him questions, right? So sometimes it pisses me off when like people ask him in a certain way, because I'm like, if he would have just phrased that better, he wouldn't like shut down. And he went from being like lighthearted to like being more like, I guess, I don't know, right? Like a kid like is already like closed off, right? He's like, okay, I'm done. I gave you guys access to me in like a nicer way, but now you guys pissed me off, so I'm just gonna whatever. So it turned more that way, and he was like, well, I don't know if I'm even coming back in 2025. I don't know, anytime for myself. And it's like, okay. But then he went on Twitter and was like, oh yeah, we can get the rematch done as early as late May. So it's like, man, like, Tank is one of those guys that he uses his position as one of the stars of boxing to have everybody in his fingertip, because yes, he lost some stock in this, but Tank is still Tank. And if anything, people are going to tune into the second fight even more to see how Tank does against LAMONT, and to see if LaMont's going to do better and not leave it to the judges this time, which might also actually get him knocked out if he tries that style, because Tank might actually come in this time and be like, all right, I'm not going to fuck around this time, or I know what he can bring, let me get in there. Or that can also hurt him, and LaMont's really ready. I don't know, yeah. It's just... And like I mentioned in the previous video, LaMont was all class, right? And he was basically like, yeah, I thought I was going to get a split. When they said his card, he's like, I thought that I was going to get a split decision win. He's like, but when they said 114, he's like, that's when I knew. And he just looked very sad. And, you know, his dad also kind of basically was confused about why the 9th round thing happened. And like I mentioned in my last video, it's just the whole thing made Tank become a meme. Basically, he's viral for the wrong reasons. And it's not his fault that the ref and the judges and the commission failed him on Roach. But now he's the one going viral online, right? And for the negative reasons, when he had said in an interview that he didn't want to become a meme, and anything that was his biggest fear in boxing, to look dumb, basically, and to become a meme online or something. And like, well, look at you now. But enough about Tank, because I love Gary Antuanne Russell versus Rayo. I freaking told you guys. I was like, why did this fight doesn't make sense to me. Like, it's a lot. And another thing that's been pissing me off about being, like, you know, in the media is when I tweet something and, like, guys are like, for example, I tweeted, like, you know, it's weird that, why did he take this fight, is what I kept asking. I wonder why Rayo took this fight. And randoms were like, what do you mean he picked this fight? He picked it. He didn't pick it. It's not like he's like, I got a belt. Who should I pick out of this landscape? You know what? Let me pick this guy whose style is like really freaking crazy, and who has a family that all boxes, and they have like their own really decorated, you know, family in boxing. Rayo didn't say that. Maybe they gave him names and like, or they brought him to him and he said sure, like, because he doesn't turn anybody down. Rayo, if anything, is what I love about him too. He doesn't duck any smoke, and he's had a great lineup. I know people are kind of roasting him because because I know people right now are kind of roasting him because Gary Antuanne did him like that, but I don't think we should do that. Like, remember Colbert, how he did Colbert, and, you know, then he took on Pitbull, and he did even the Dos Santos laws, that's, you know, he took that fight, and it's still, even if he lost, he had a lot of good fights that he gave us. So I'm not really liking the Rayo slander right now, but that doesn't mean I can't say that, oh my God, Antuanne Russell just completely, like I mentioned in my newsletter, he walked out like he had already polished the place in his home for like the belt to bring it back. Even when Rayo was like, I'm gonna fight you then. I'm gonna give it all that I can because I'm out of options at this point in the later rounds. Antuanne Russell was like, oh, I bet. And like, he still, I feel like, even got the better of the exchanges when they were trading in the middle of the ring. But it was mostly just Antuanne walking Rayo back against the ropes and landing some sharp shots. And it was just such a badass fight. And in the way of, like, witnessing Antuanne becoming a champ again. And with his brothers there and, you know, crying over their late dad. Like, I got super emotional. And shout out to Rayo, right? Like, he took the fight. There's nothing to take away from him because he did take the fight. but he didn't pick the fight. Like, they probably were like, oh, come on, like, this is the fight that would make sense. And he doesn't duck anybody. He's like, fine. But I don't like when people are like, how are you going to tell me? I talked to him. Watch the interview. And also, he always, like, this is not the first time that he does that cooling mask that looks like the MF Doom mask. But it goes like, I think this one, it went viral. It went more viral because it was in a Tank undercard. Because I saw way more posts about it. And he's had it before. And I love it too. He looks freaking awesome. And that looks like it feels so good. And now Sandor Martin versus Avispa Puello. I know that we think like Sandor Martin keeps getting robbed. But I also wanted to remind you guys that like, he's always the B-side, right? And as a B-side, he's done amazing. A lot of people feel that he beat Teofimo. I think he beat Teofimo. This card, with this fight, I think he faded. Like, he does this thing where he starts, like, really well and he's walking them back, but then eventually starts kind of fading. And it makes, fights close. He never makes them definitive. Either or. He never definitively loses, but I don't think he's either definitively winning either. So, like, I feel like bad for Sandor Martin because none of these guys have beat him like that. Like, really definitively beat him. But also it's going to be hard for him to get fights because I don't think guys are going to want to keep fighting Sandor Martin because he's not going to make it an easy night for anybody, right? It was a great fight. I think that Avispa did edge it out because I felt like Sandor Martin gave away some of the later rounds, but it was a close fight, and I just feel like also that kind of, speaking of boxing politics, like in my last video, they want to set up that rematch with Puello and Antuanne Russell for unification. Are you kidding me? That's a main event right there. Well, maybe a co-main because, it's smaller weight classes and people are kind of weird. But that's a great freaking fight right there. That's another big co-main event, even for this rematch against LaMont Roach with Tank, right? So, it was a great fight. I know people are mad about the whole robbery aspect with Sandor Martin. And while I do agree that Sandor Martin always comes to fight, and I feel bad for the guy, he also doesn't make it definitive when he wins. So, in my opinion. And moving on to Tellez versus JRock. I also thought that fight was really good when they announced it because, the Cuban prospect only had 9 fights. And JRock is a former world champ. Like, he was also one of those really intriguing guys in the mix when he was in the mix. And he did really well in the way that, like, looking at how Hurd did earlier in the prelims, he did better in that his rematch, his reflexes were still, he did go the distance against the Yes, right? And I'm not really holding anything from the Yes, right? Because I hold JRock to a high standard even if he's older now. But I think, in this stage, they really wanted him to get a knockout victory. But nevertheless, I still think it was an impressive performance. He looked good. He basically dominated as he should have. And, I'm excited to see him in the mix in this division and see how he does. And moving on to Hurd, who I loved his mustache. And you guys know how much, well, I don't even know why I said that. My close boxing besties know how much I love Hurd when he was also in the mix. And, he was just a shell of himself. And in the press conference leading up to the fight, he said if he can't beat guys like his opponent, then he should get out of there. And he was sluggish. He just looked very much washed. And I'm glad that he retired. And just hearing his voice crack while he, was basically saying that he was retiring made me emotional because I was like, damn, like, especially him and JRock, right? At one point, they were the ones at the top of the division. They were the ones, either headlining or co-headlining these cards, these big events, and now they're in prelims and deeper in undercards and fighting their last fights, right? And just my shout out to Hurd, who in my opinion gave us some really great fights. And those were all the fights that I saw live. I just want to talk about the atmosphere at the Barclays and how it's different from Vegas or anybody else. And I think one day I'm going to make a video basically rating all the venues or just the crowds because it's very different. Everybody has like their thing, but it's very different. For example, Vegas, you go and like you don't really see a lot of people there for like the undercard. Maybe the especially if it's like a Mexican card, like they're never early. Us, you can't take us nowhere because we're drinking. We're gonna go be drinking before the main events, so we're gonna not be in the seats, right? No, actually, I'm not gonna say we because I am there early, but because I'm covering these fights, so and I want to be there. In Vegas, it's like things don't really start getting popping until like the co-main event, where like it starts actually feeling like it's full, and you can see the crowd and everybody as soon as the like person in the screen comes out, you know, their favorite fighter, it's like, oh my god, and everybody goes crazy every time they show, even if they just show them arriving or they show them train, like, you know, warming up, everybody goes crazy in Vegas. Even same in Arizona and Texas. Every time I've seen that everywhere, people clap. I didn't see that at the Barclays. Like they showed Tank and I think Rayo got people like cheering when they showed him, and I think that Tank got people maybe towards the end, like when he was warming up. I think people did cheer, but like every other time when you know they would show him and they're, you know, arriving or anything, no one cheered, and I'd be like, oh, like that's huh. You know, then the crowd was very much more mellow, like very mellow, until the main event or until there was like action like that. But you know, it was more mellow. I think I'm just used to it like being like a party in Vegas, right? They have music and they had music here, but it was more like it was more cultural, right? I think that's what I liked about covering at the Barclays and getting that experience of like, oh, so this is what it's like, because over there's more cultural, like boxing culture is showing up for these fights. It's not like Vegas where, you know, it's a lot of casuals. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of casuals everywhere. But like in Vegas, it's like people go as they're taking a vacation. They're going and that's what they're gonna do. Watch a fight and show up and be fancy. And they wear their like shiny, super cool, right? Like, but in New York, it's like these are people who go to boxing events. These are people who are already fashionable outside of the fight night. They're not just showing up for fight night, which I'm sure they're showing off. But I'm just saying, like, they're always looking fresh. And you can see that in their style. It was just such a different... I loved it. Like, people were outside, you know, selling shirts just like here, right? Like the unofficial shirts. Dang, I didn't get me a shirt. But yeah, like, it was really, really cool to see the ring entrance too. I have no idea who these people are. Like, I don't know anything about these people, but it looks so cool to see go the atmosphere go from like, you know, mellow to like as soon as they started the announcement for the main event, ring walks, everybody turned up, and even more when Tank walked out. So that was amazing. I'd love to see that, and it was just an amazing time. I hope I get to go to New York for another fight now because it was amazing. But yeah, I yapped enough. Let me know what you think in the comments. What was your favorite fight of the card? What do you think about it? What do you think about Nick? Oh my god. Let me know what you think about Nick. What is happening? Let me know what you think about Nikkei, hair grease gate, and all of that. Why is my camera zooming in? I think that's my cue to leave. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.